And then the next one, number 3 on that list, was approachability. Just being able to be approached and having those conversations, having those tough conversations in some cases, or just being approached to have a conversation in general. I've always kind of had to work on that. I kind of had like a stigma that I was unapproachable. I'm 6'2", I get big, tall, shaved head. I can be intimidating to some people, right? So I'd have to go out of my way to make them understand that, just because I'm big, tall, and ugly, you can still approach me with your problems, and we can have a conversation, whether it's a problem about some training you need to do, or you need to go to your daughter's ballet recital. The great ones are approachable and able to have conversations across the whole depth and breadth of somebody's career and their personal life. And I've just been around so many grouchy, grumpy command sergeant major enlisted types, and some 05s and 06s that they just looked unhappy in life, for one. So you didn't want to go talk to them. They were miserable. They were short-tempered. They would snap at you. They were just not fun people to talk to. You didn't want to talk to them at all. And as I say this, I know you guys that are listening are picturing people in your mind that were that unapproachable person. And like I said, I had that problem, and I had to be deliberate and intentional about bringing those barriers down so I was approachable. Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today we have a special episode with just me again. You just get me. We're slowing down on the guests a little bit as we go into the holiday season. I trust that everybody out there listening had a great Christmas. I hope you did. I hope you got everything you asked for. I'm still in the Christmas spirit, rocking the Santa sweater here because, I wish it was Christmas year round because it is my favorite holiday for a number of reasons. And it's been really nice this year. I'm actually home for Christmas I think this is maybe my third Christmas in a row, which is very rare to be home. So it's been good. I don't think my youngest son, Maverick, I think he's only missed one Christmas with me. So maybe this is my second Christmas in a row home, but it's been good. Like I said, I hope you guys all had a great Christmas. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes to be a Ranger, some of the leader traits that I've seen over the years that make good members of the 75th Ranger Regiment. So I spend a lot of time on YouTube. If you ask my kids, I spend a little bit too much time on YouTube. They're saying, "Dad, do we really have to watch another video about cameras and how to set the autofocus on your Canon camera? You haven't figured that out yet." So I guess I've had too many near experiences with the explosives that my memory is just not quite what it used to be. So in all that looking and all that time I've spent on YouTube, I've been coming across a lot of videos that discuss what it takes to be a Navy SEAL, what it takes to be a Green Beret, the leader traits of a military officer, all kinds of different things, laying out the traits to be in the military and then specifically in special ops, and not just U.S. special ops, but around the globe. And I've been fortunate enough in my career in the Army to have spent time with just about every type of special operations unit that is out there globally, at least those that we're friendly with, right? And I've noticed through all of that, through no matter who I was working with, whether they're U.S. Special Operations Forces or Australian or British or German, all of the great leaders in those formations had 5 traits that were common to all of them. And it's really not rocket science. You can look at some of this stuff and they're going to tell you all about the mindset and this and that. And they're going to try to make it a little bit more difficult than it really is. But in my opinion, and in what I've seen of great leaders in the Army and the special operations community, they've all had these 5 traits in common. And that didn't mean they weren't great leaders. If they didn't have these 5 traits, they might have had a couple of different ones. And you can argue all day with somebody about what traits it is that makes somebody a great leader or special operator. But I do, just from my experience, these 5 traits that I'm going to talk about are the ones that I saw most prevalent among the people that I got to work with. And I tried to model my own leadership, not only at work, but at home in a lot of instances, or when I was dealing with civilian counterparts, or as I transition into my next career in the civilian side. These are traits that I'm going to take with me as I continue my career outside of the uniform. So I'll break it down to the 5 that I've seen, and then we'll go a little bit more in detail of what each one of those kind of means to me and what I saw in each one of those 5 things that made them successful and made them what they are. So, like I said, it's really not rocket science. It's not groundbreaking stuff. And I listed it here in no particular order. So the first one was that I saw in all of the great special operations leaders that I've been around in my career. They were in the right place at the right time and in the right uniform. That sounds simple, right? You just got to show up where you're told to show up, when you're supposed to show up, and in the uniform you're supposed to show up in. And as easy as that sounds, that is something that seemed to be very difficult for some people that I've seen over my years in the military. You got to show up first. That's the first thing you got to do. And we'll break it down a little bit more. But the number 2 thing I saw in there is the great leaders, they understand that they didn't have all the answers. They didn't have to be the know-it-all. I think everybody, whether you're in the military or not, we all know somebody who knows everything, right? They know it all. They don't need help from anybody. And they're always telling you about how much they know. You know, when you run into them, the first thing they ask you is, hey, what book are you reading right now? Which drives me nuts because they're just trying to flex their intellectual power over you. But the best ones I ever saw said, hey, I don't know how to do that, but I'll find the person who does. Number 3, they were approachable, which is not easy. And some of the rough and tumble groups that I run in the circles and the leaders I've had, it's not always easy to be approachable. But the great ones were always approachable. And when they gave off an error or, you know, had a reputation of being unapproachable, they went out of their way to be approachable so that people could come to them. And number 4, it goes right along there with the number 1 of the right place, right time, right uniform, but just being reliable, being somebody you can count on. That is a trait that I saw, you know, through everybody who was a great leader, special operations or not. They were reliable people. You could just count on them. If you asked them to do something, they did it. And the last one that rounds out my top 5 that I saw amongst all of them that I would consider great was they themselves made the tough decisions, and they themselves had the tough conversations. And what I mean by that is they didn't have their bad news delivered by a proxy, by somebody else. If they had to give out bad news, they sent it themselves. If they had to fire somebody, they went and did it themselves. If they had to promote somebody over somebody else, they went and did it themselves. They didn't have somebody else do that dirty work for them. And unfortunately, I've seen a whole lot of leaders not do that dirty work themselves, which just, it's kind of cowardly if you ask me. And so we'll go into each one of these a little bit deeper, but those are the 5 that I've seen, in my 20 years that were common to all. Now there's a few here and there that I didn't mention that I'm sure we could debate for hours on end. But I will say these are the 5 things that I saw in the 20 years I spent in the service of the great leaders. These 5 things, all of them had it, and I spent some time reflecting and journaling and writing these out when I thought of them. And these are the ones they rose to the top. All of the great ones had these 5 things. And we'll go back and we'll break it all down just a little bit more. And it's that first one, that right place, right time, right uniform, right? That sounds so simple. And like I said, all of this transcends the service, right? If you can count on somebody that they're going to show up, they're going to have the equipment they need. They're going to be in a uniform or dress that is appropriate for the situation or the task that they're doing. And they're there on the right time. 10 minutes early is on time. I don't care if you're in the Army. I don't care if you're a civilian. If you tell somebody you're going to be there at 9:00, you're there at 8:50 and you're ready to go, right? So you can, so that at 9:00, you're ready to start working. Simplest thing in the world. I would say one of the first things that you'll notice in a leader or a young person coming into the organization like the 75th, the first tell you can find is if they have inconsistencies in right place, right time, right uniform. And then you would know early that you're going to have problems with this person if you don't nip it in the butt fast and get to them and say, hey, you're really good. You're really good when you get there, but I can't count on you being there on the right time. And when you're there, you forget half the stuff that you're supposed to bring. So that first step, all of them had it. All the greats have it, and they carry it through their career. They always show up, right place, right time, right uniform, and they're ready to go. And it didn't matter whether they were the day one private coming into the organization or if they were the 25-year sergeant major or battalion commander. They were there when they said they were going to be there, and almost always, 99 out of 100, were there early and ready to go. Simple one, like I said, but all of them had it. And if you go to number 2, I think this is probably one of the more understated ones of all of it, is understanding that you don't have all the answers. I think leaders can fall into the trap where they think they have to know everything. And like I said earlier, I think some of us, we've all had that leader that they just knew they could read, they could spout out the manual to you. They could tell you verbatim what was happening in the book because they just thought they had to know everything. And I will tell you, although they were very knowledgeable leaders, they were all terrible, right? They were all holier than thou. They thought they were better than you. And I'm not saying not having a knowledge base in it, but you don't have to memorize verbatim every manual in the United States Army, right? Or your job. You need to know, you need to be a subject matter expert in your lane where you're at, but you don't have to know everything. And if you do know everything, great. Not everybody needs to know that you know everything, and you don't need to flaunt that out there. And I will say the ones that just were open about it say, hey, I don't know how to do this, but I will find the person that does. We're the best leaders. And I'll say I had a great experience of this when I was a company first sergeant. So, a company first sergeant, I had 136 Rangers in my company. 107 of them were NCOs, and they were all working in jobs that I had never done in the Army as a Delta company first sergeant. I was never a mortarman. I was never a sniper. I was never a tech guy. I was never a reconnaissance guy. Never did any of that in my career. I have general knowledge of all of those things, but I never did it. I was a line infantry leader all the way through my platoon sergeant to my first sergeant time. So when I got to that company, I'm not the subject matter expert on any of those tasks, but I found out what my job was. I found out where I could be value added, and it was to eliminate those 3-foot walls that can be brought up when they're trying to get stuff accomplished. I would go into their offices and into their cages or their lockers there, and I would say, what can I do for you to help you be more successful at X? And, I would gain a base understanding of what X was so that I knew it was something value added. And then I would help eliminate the barriers to help them get to the training objectives they need, to buy the equipment that they needed, to bring more personnel into the company or into the section. I was never going to be the subject matter expert at the mortars, right? But if they told me they needed X amount of rounds to complete the training and we were having trouble getting X amount of rounds, it was then my job to understand their problem and then go articulate the why we needed these rounds at this time to conduct this training and what value it was going to add when we deployed overseas. So I didn't know all the technical pieces in between, but I knew the why. I knew why they needed it, and I went and figured out how to get it so that they could be successful. And that's another one I've seen through great leaders. They didn't have all the answers, but they knew how to leverage the people who did have the answers to the best of their ability, and that they built teams. That's the way you build teams, is by doing that. And the great ones, they build teams. That's one of the best things they do. And then the next one, number 3 on that list, was approachability. Just being able to be approached and having those conversations, having those tough conversations in some cases, or just being approached to have a conversation in general. I've always kind of had to work on that. I kind of had a stigma that I was unapproachable. I'm 6'2", I get big, tall, shaved head. I can be intimidating to some people, right? So I'd have to go out of my way to make them understand that, yeah, just because I'm big, tall, and ugly, you can still approach me with your problems, and we can have a conversation, whether it's a problem about some training you need to do, or you need to go to your daughter's ballet recital. The great ones are approachable and able to have conversations across the whole depth and breadth of somebody's career and their personal life. And I've just been around so many grouchy, grumpy command sergeant major enlisted types, and some O5s and O6s that they just looked unhappy in life, for one. So you didn't want to go talk to them. They were miserable. They were short tempered. They would snap at you. They would, they were just not fun people to talk to. You didn't want to talk to them at all. And as I say this, I know you guys that are listening are picturing people in your mind that were that unapproachable person. And like I said, I had that problem, and I had to be deliberate and intentional about bringing those barriers down so I was approachable. I try to make it a point to get out of the office and go circulate with the guys in the company, at the lowest echelon in the company, to get to know them, to get to know who they are, so that when something did happen or they had a question, they felt comfortable asking me. So the greats in all aspects, I think they're approachable. And when they understand that you're approachable and you talk to them and you let them know that, they'll know when the appropriate time is to approach you and talk to you, or when you're consumed with something and they can't, but they always know they can circle back and come in and talk to you. So that's the third trait or attribute that I saw in all the great leaders. The next one, I think it's pretty simple, just reliability. When I was a Ranger School instructor for a brief minute up in 5th Ranger Training Battalion, I think I got the greatest compliment. I say it was the greatest compliment I ever received from another service member in my military career. When I went up to 5th Ranger Training Battalion, I moved fairly fast through the wickets there as a grading Ranger School students. You have to do certain amount of things to become qualified and certified to grade each duty position that's in Ranger School. And I was moving pretty fast through it. And I remember there was a conversation one day where they said, Barnett is going to go and be the platoon sergeant grader. And I hadn't been there very long. And somebody said, well, why Barnett? Because this other person had been there longer than me. And all he said was, it's because Barnett's reliable. I know he's going to be there, and I know he's going to do what's right. And I'm not saying that to brag on myself. I'm saying that because at that moment, that kind of was a light bulb for me, where I thought, every great leader I've ever had, they were reliable. And they were reliable beyond the uniform. They were reliable. If I called them on a Saturday and I said, I need to move my couch, they showed up and helped me move my couch, right? And I knew I could count on them. Or if they needed me to carry the mail to the command, or I needed them to go tell the command something that was outside of my scope to jump, using the rank structure, I knew they were going to tell them. I could rely on them to relay the message that I needed relayed. And reliability is just, it can't be overstated. If you can rely on somebody, everybody knows those 2 or 3 people in their life that they can just rely on, that if they ask them to do something, they know it's going to get done, right? And every single great leader that I saw, they were reliable, right? And that's a tough trait to have and then to maintain throughout a career. But I think it's one of the most important ones that we have there. And then with that reliability builds trust, right? If you can rely on somebody, you trust them. You trust that they're going to do the right thing when you're not there. You trust that they're going to make the right decisions if they don't have somebody to bounce what they have to do in the heat of the moment they can't bounce it off of you as their leader. That reliability builds trust. It builds a mutual trust. And that's something that's kind of a cornerstone of all great leadership relationships is trust. And it all starts with, can you rely on this person to be there for you when you need them and when you ask them to be there. And then the last one of those 5 is making the tough calls on they did it. They didn't give that to somebody else. And I saw it quite a bit later in my military careers with some people where there was a tough decision that had to be made, but they were too scared, too cowardly to go tell somebody to deliver that bad news, to say, hey, your mission is getting denied. We're not sending you. Even though that person was the one that denied them, they passed that buck down to somebody else to deliver the news, right? Which is just a very, it's not a good way to do business, right? Because when you take that bad news and you know it's going to be bad and you know it's going to be met with some hostility, that hostility, you can diffuse it right there in the moment, right? When you deliver that bad news and you're going to get a backlash right away, but you can go back and you can hopefully tell them the why and to come to some sort of mutual agreement, mutual understanding as why you had to make that decision or why that decision was made. Then you can come away from that, hopefully without any of the talking behind each other's back and the backstabbing, because that's where it all starts. It all starts with cowardly leadership that won't deliver that news on their own. They pass it off to somebody else to deliver the news. And like I said, I saw quite a bit of that later in my career as I went, where they just wouldn't do it themselves. They didn't have the courage to go down there and deliver that bad news that they had to them, but they were happy to go deliver good news. They'd pick up the phone right away and say, hey, you're approved to do X and you're approved to do Y. But as soon as it became, you're not able to do it or you can't do it or I don't support that, hey, you over there, you go tell this person that they can't do it. Saw it more than I hated it. And it's part of those tough conversations, but through those conversations comes a better understanding, which builds on that trust and the reliability. And you'll know where they come from. So if you're a leader out there, don't pass the buck when those tough decisions have to get made and you have to make them. And then don't be the person that somebody has bad news to deliver. So they give it to you to deliver, but you then give it to somebody else. That just makes it worse. If you are the one that gets pegged, hey, you got to go deliver the news, do it. Right? Don't let it keep trickling down to somebody else to have to deliver the news, because the farther you get away from that communication from the top, the more muddy it's going to be. It's like playing that telephone game when you're a kid. By the time the story comes back around, you have no idea what the actual story was. So be a man, be a leader, right? Not necessarily a man, just 20 years of what I've done. It's just the lingo I have, but own it. Own it. If somebody's too scared to own it, you own it. You stop it right there. You're the dead stop behind it, and you own it, and you go deliver that news. And like I said, these 5 things, I sat there for a while and I looked at them and I said, I saw all this stuff of what I saw on YouTube and some other podcasts of what it was to be a great leader and what it took to be successful in these. And they always seemed like they made it more difficult than it was. Yeah, of course you got to be in good physical shape. You got to be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. But that going into it, right? It's these little things that some would consider little things: right place, right time, right uniform, not once, but for 20 years, right? I was late to work twice in 20 years. Once as a stupid team leader, had a few too many beverages the night before, and another time when I just overslept, right? And I remember those times, right? I don't remember every time I was on time, but I remember the 2 times I was late, and they still kind of, weigh on me. So simple, just show up and be consistent. You don't have all the answers. Don't be the person that thinks you have all the answers. Don't be the person that thinks you have to learn all the answers. Surround yourself with a team, and inside of that team, collectively, you're going to have the answers, right? It can get lonely as you go up into leadership. It gets lonely at the top, and you feel like you have to do more on your own and learn more, but you just end up putting more pressure on yourself. You become the person that you didn't want to become, that unapproachable, unhappy, miserable leader, that bitter person. You don't have to have all the answers, right? You just need to know the people who do and surround yourself with them and empower them, right? To help you make those decisions. Be approachable. I can't state enough. That's hard to do. Again, as you go up, you can become so focused on the problem that you're not seeing left and right and seeing what's really going on, and your reports and subordinates can think that you're unapproachable and just, grouchy and miserable all the time. Get out of your office, get outside, take a walk, go walk around, go talk to people about stuff other than work when you're at work, and build a rapport with your team, your company, your squad, your platoon, to where even the lowest person in there knows that they know when the appropriate time is to come and talk to you, and they know that they can come and talk to you about, when the vehicles need to be staged to drive out to the training area, or, hey, my wife said she wants a divorce, and I don't know what to do, because I've had that conversation. I've had people bring that to me, and I'm glad I created an environment where they could. So do what you have to do to be approachable. Be reliable. That's maybe the most important one, is when you can rely. There's about 3 people that come straight to the top of my head that I know, right now as I'm recording this, it's Christmas Eve, but if I called them right now and I said, and I needed help, they would be there in a heartbeat to help me, because I just know they're reliable. They're those type of people. And you should strive to be that type of person as well, and teach others to do it, because it makes that team better when you can rely and trust one another. And then that last one is just own it. Own everything. Own all the problems. Own the good. Own the bad. And deliver the message yourself. Don't pass it off to somebody else. And there might be some situations where everything is very dynamic. And you can't deliver that bad news or that situation update right now, and you have to give it to somebody else to do it. But what you do is, when you're able to, when things slow down, you go back and you tell them why you sent X to go give your bad news, right? This is why I had to do it. And get that perspective from them so you understand, so that you can build a mutual understanding there. But I just see way too many people in senior leader positions pass the buck to somebody else. Don't do that. Have your own tough conversations, and make your own tough decisions, and deliver it, and be ready for the feedback. You got put in these positions of leadership for a reason. So you make those decisions, own your decisions, and own them in the face, in front of the people that are relying on you, to do the right thing by them or their people as well. So just a quick little Leading with Vulnerability podcast here. Talk a little bit about leadership and what I've seen over the last 20 years that has made everybody that I consider a great leader, and that list is short, and I by no means put myself on that list. But these 5 things are the things that I saw. Every one of those great ones that is on that list had those 5 things. I've had a lot of good leaders, a lot of really good leaders. I've had few great leaders that did all 5 of these, right? And ask yourself, do you do them all? And what can you do to be better? Or what would you add to this list? I'd be curious to hear from you down in the comments what you would substitute in here, or what you would add to. But I would like to know, what are your top 5? What did I miss here? What are your top 5 things that make great special operations leaders, great rangers, great people, great husbands, great fathers, great leaders, right? We're all leaders. So happy holidays, happy New Year. Leading with Vulnerability. We'll see you guys in 2022. Hopefully we got some really big things coming and stuff to announce. And I'm just glad that all of you are here with me on this journey. I couldn't do it without you guys out there, you guys and girls that are patrons of the podcast. Your $10 a month goes way farther than you will ever know, right? And I'm looking at some of that $10 right now, and a couple of cameras I rented and stuff, as I'm trying to do some things and make a better product for all of you guys. So I mean it when I say it. I love all of you guys that are listening. I really need and want your feedback. So go to the website, send me an email, send me a direct message, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And I hope you have a great 2022. Enjoy time with your families, and we'll talk to you guys again in a week. Happy holidays.